All right, everybody, and welcome back to the Aftermath on the Orange Crush podcast. David, I see it on your screen. Clemson won. Did I just type that? No, you're not mistaken, ladies and gentlemen. Clemson won a football game, and they won a football game at home. They found a team that can shoot itself in the foot more than Clemson. That's fascinating. David, how are you doing, man? Happy Sunday. Happy Victory Sunday, might I add.
Yeah, Clemson takes another step toward bowl eligibility, wherever that bowl could be. It's not going to be a great one, right? Like, we know that because, the max is 7 wins. What does that get you? I don't know. Maybe a Gator Bowl would take you if you could win out. Anyway, irregardless of any of that, Clemson won. Florida State had their chances. Gus Malzahn dialed up some nice touchdown plays, and Tommy Castellanos couldn't hit them, or their wide receivers couldn't reel them in, or whatever happened. And Clemson went into an offensive shell, but still managed to win. And so the outlook is a little bit brighter on this windy Sunday.
Yeah, certainly. And I think what's fascinating about Clemson last night is you envisioned this track meet between a Clemson offense that just put up 45 points. Cade Klubnik has been balling out, really, since the start of October. 8 touchdowns to 1 interception. Third, thanks to Ross Taylor for sending me this, third in passer rating in the country since the start of October, playing really well. So you imagine with the defense giving up a lot of points, you're going to have to win a certain way. And Clemson, after a first half, really felt like they dictated the clock, controlled it, more or less calling not to lose. A lot of Florida State mistakes that you probably could have changed the dynamic of the game after kind of watching it over. A lot of coverage busts still, but enough to get the win.
Enough to get the win. And, the defense, I'm going to write a column for Monday that is, it almost felt like normal for a little bit there. You had Brent Venables on the sidelines, the defense allowing, one first half touchdown and no other touchdowns after that. And, the Clemson gets the win. The fans get to go on the field. A megaphone gets told. Hey, it was normal for a little bit. They even had some fog roll in over the south stands there kind of late in the game. And it felt good. Everybody went to the middle of the field and they celebrated. Looked like the players stayed out there a little bit longer to celebrate with the fans. And, it can be an ugly win, but it's still a win. And it's a win that was much needed for a Clemson program that has kind of been scuffling along. And I love the story that you wrote about the players kind of coming out after Tiger Walk, meeting at the Tiger Paw, kind of having a little bit of a, hey, this is on us session and praying about it. And coming together as a team. Maybe that should have happened earlier in the year. I think you actually wrote that too. And so now you look ahead to this week, and Grayson, it's a short week. Got to head to Louisville Friday.
Yeah, and I'd love to touch on that moment pregame. And after talking to Klubnik, Avion Terrell, Blake Miller, a lot of different perspectives. And the thing that you kind of gather from it wasn't some sort of planned thing from Monday. It's, guys, Monday morning, we're going to go pray at midfield. It felt very spur of the moment. And the thing that I was trying to capture in that piece was that the faith has been tested not only just within themselves, but this faith in this program. There's been a lot of that word, even if it's not in a religious context. It was a moment for them to kind of come together. It's a game that Clemson fans maybe aren't picking you to win. And overall, you kind of come together and rally and get what may be that final primetime game, pending what Furman and the ACC, ESPN, TV people end up deciding on that front. But yeah, short week for sure. What's fascinating for this is, does a short week benefit this group kind of getting to just immediately get back into the fray where you've played winning football for the first time in a while? We see Dabo smile post-game for the first time in a while. It's been a lot of just moaning and groan, not like he's begrudgingly up there, but he'd love to probably talk after a win for a change. And so I think what's fascinating to me is the attitude of this group. There's been so much said about just stay the course. We believe. There's a lot of heart. You finally saw that come to a win.
Yeah, and the good news for them is that it is a Friday night game. It is a short week, but if you were going to play at noon on Saturday, which I don't think anybody would be talking about, that's only about a 17-hour difference, right? Like, so you're going to play 17 hours earlier. Yeah, sure, it's almost a day, but you'll still get in your full week of practice. You'll still have your regular walkthrough, except instead of having a team dinner at the visiting hotel on Friday night, you're going to go to Louisville and play a football game. And they're going to get a Louisville team. Like, I don't know if it's better or not. This is a team that has kind of been living on the edge all year. right? They have been living on the edge. They had a great win at Miami, and then boom, they lose at home last night to the Cowgirl in overtime. And now you better believe Jeff Brom is going to have his players and his team. He's going to have their full attention with Clemson coming to town. And even though they beat Clemson last year, you better believe this is still going to be almost like a Super Bowl for Louisville. We talked about it yesterday in the press box. Duke, they beat Clemson last time, but it was almost like a Super Bowl for them, and they go out and lay down against UConn. It's still the brand. It's still the tiger paw on the side of the helmet. Clemson wants, people want to go out and they want to beat Clemson. But if I'm Dabo Swinney, I'm going to revel in this one as long as I can with this group, which has proven to maybe be a little bit of a group that needs a little bit of coddling at times, right? Maybe you coddle them just a little bit more on this one and say good job. And Brent Venables won't be on the sidelines Friday night. He's got his own game to go and play and be a part of. But you revel in this one and you say, let's take a step forward. But for one night, better than Florida State. And let me touch on this. Florida State, Gus Malzahn, Thomas Castellanos, they kept having it looked like on TV they were taking smelling salts to that kid, which I didn't think they were doing that anymore. I know he had the concussion a couple of weeks ago. He was not sharp. He ran the football with abandon. Looked like he even got a late personal foul penalty on Wade Woodaz on a run. But they just could not get it going. Nation's number one offense. We talked about it earlier in the week. 700, almost 800 yards against Kent State. East Texas A&M, almost 800 yards. That skews the numbers a lot, and that's why they're the nation's number one offense. But Clemson still held them to season lows in yards and points and had season highs in sacks and tackles for loss.
Yeah, 6 sacks, 2 coming from Terrell. They've kept trying that corner blitz with Terrell, and for the first time consistently, the safeties were able to stay home, and that trust that Alan talked about, you're able to kind of keep Castellanos in the pocket for the most part. I feel like the group did a good job of keeping him squarely in there, force you to beat him with his arm. He's not capable of making those big-time throws over the middle of the field and really beating you in that sense where he's going to stand there because he is a shorter quarterback. So there's going to be throws that are just going to be a little high. One of them was the miss deep to one of his speedy receivers. You had Tink Kelly and I believe Hampton on that, and both just were completely toasted. But he overthrows it. Kept him in the pocket, rattled his timing a little bit. So I really felt like in terms of, yeah, sure, you could call out the coverage bust like we have, but 10 points. So when he says at the end of the day, that should be enough to win, and it was on Saturday night overall for this product.
It was enough. And, Castellanos, I was taking a look at some of the PFF grades, and he graded out as a 6D. Squirrel White, a 47.5. Their wide receivers were not great. We know that the tight end, Randy Pittman, he dropped that wheel route. That seemed to be, one of the bigger plays in the game because that's fourth down. You're in your own territory. You're thinking, man, we're going to dial up something. And it was the perfect call because Pittman's got nobody except his head coach within 25 yards of him. And he may walk into the end zone and he drops the pass and they, turn it over. And then 2 plays later, Clemson gets a touchdown off of it. And all of a sudden it's 15-0 rather than 8-7 or 8-6 or 8-8 or whatever you want to do. Florida State definitely had their shots. Clemson was very lucky. And, I kind of wrote that in the grades that the offense did enough. The defense did enough. But Brandon Rink, who works for TigerNet, he said, I think that Florida State is just a little bit south of mid. And that's kind of the way I feel about this team after finally watching them in person last night.
Before we get back to this video, we'd like to thank the title sponsor for this podcast, Newton Scott and Associates. This team is headlined by Jeff Scott, former Clemson assistant coach and 2-time national champion, as well as Eric Newton, a longtime local and trusted real estate partner. These two are teaming up to provide a first-class experience for all Clemson fans. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or build in the upstate area of South Carolina, you can trust Newton Scott and Associates. Choose the same team that Clemson coaches are selecting when they're looking to buy, sell, or build, all the way from Tigertown to Lake Kiowee. For more information, you can find them at newtonscottsc.com or by calling the number 864-722-9062. That's 864-722-9062. Now, let's get back to the video.
Yeah, south of mid. I kind of throw it in there as a joke that tonight was Saturday night was the mid-off. It's the battle of mid. But overall, like all jokes aside, the word that you use that I love kind of to describe this game is enough. We've seen Clemson make plays in games, stay in them, but it never was, you just need that one or extra play to get it done. Enough's the right word here where you control the game. And you mentioned Louisville. I'd love to go over the ACC standings because last night it took this is the Wild West out here. So you have Georgia Tech at 5-1 in the conference. They lost to NC State last week. I believe they're on a bye. Virginia loses Chandler Morris. Don't know how long he's out for. They're 5-1 in conference play. They do have that loss to NC State. That's not a conference win. Pittsburgh, with a freshman quarterback, is 5-1. SMU is 5-1. Duke, even though they lost to UConn, is right in it at 4-1. And Louisville's at 4-2. They're on that bubble. So this Friday night game is further enhanced by something like that where you have this opportunity in front of you.
Yeah, and how long has it been since Clemson's been able to play spoiler?
Yeah.
Like I can't even remember when the last time was. Maybe, there was that game against Wake Forest when Wake Forest won the division a few years ago, but I don't even think Clemson was really even in a spoiler role at that point. They still beat Wake Forest because that's what they do. But you look at all those teams there at the top of the standings. I like Pittsburgh. I really do. I think that's a decent football team. Not so much in love with with SMU, even though they just keep finding ways to win. The AC standings are a mess. Miami was thought to be the great team in the league. They're 3-2. Wake Forest is 3-3. Clemson's 3-4. Like there's a whole lot of teams there in the middle. Whole lot of teams that are bad at the bottom. And by the way, Clemson lost to one of those. In Syracuse, who's now 1-6. That's just, and so that brings me to this point. And I know I'm talking a lot there. I think that this season had so much promise for the Tigers. And I look at this ACC league, and like I said, I really love Pitt. I don't think there's any great teams, right? And if Clemson could have just taken care of business and somehow found a way to right their wrongs after that LSU game, it was all right there for them. Do you care if you're going to Charlotte to take on Georgia Tech or Virginia or any of those teams? No, because I kind of feel like Clemson has played those teams close and has been is just as good as them, but they somehow let all of this slip away. And now, who knows who's going to make it to Charlotte. It's not going to be Clemson, but Clemson now gets to play a little bit of a spoiler in their last ACC game.
Yeah, it's that last conference game. Louisville had Clemson's number last year coming into Death Valley and kind of playing spoiler on that front where you take over and you're the one that ruins potentially Clemson's path to Charlotte, even though it ended up working out for Clemson in the end. That was sort of – the roles are sort of inverse. Louisville, now they do have the loss to Cal, so I don't know if they'll still be ranked, maybe probably in the top 25 still. But an opportunity for Clemson to put together not only string back-to-back wins once again in conference play. They did it against BC and North Carolina, but continue to find this theme of ending the season on a high note. And Sweeney said, if we can bottle this up, we can have a great finish. Maybe that great finish ends in Birmingham or New York City. We'll see. Not sure where it goes, but overall this team's finding its pieces, putting it together, and perspective obviously shifts, and you're like, well, it's a little too late. You're 4-5. This team isn't very good, as we've discovered over the years, so you have to kind of pick up the pieces where they may fall. So, David, interesting results last night. Any final thoughts? This is more of a quick hitter. We'll have another podcast to preview Louisville later on this week before we head to Kentucky. Any final thoughts?
Well, playing the spoiler role, let's talk about Louisville one more time here. Louisville's 4-2, and they have 5 teams ahead of them with 1 loss in the league. So a third loss, to me, that's it. I think you're disqualified from ACC championship consideration because there's 5 teams ahead of you with 1 loss. Then you've got to have, at least 3 other teams kind of come back to you with 2 more losses. And, they all kind of have maybe 2 more conference games remaining. So you're asking a lot of somebody's to lose out. If you lose this game and then you got to go win your final one, I think this is it for Louisville. Like, they have to win this game to be, in consideration. And for Clemson, you want to see that 60-minute game, that 60 minutes of complimentary football. And the offense went into a shell 11 yards in the fourth quarter. Now, listen, this has been a Dabo Swinney staple since he arrived. If Clemson gets a lead and he thinks the defense is going to hold it, he is never going to allow any offensive coordinator to go out and put that in jeopardy. He's just not. And that's what we see. And I kind of go back, you go back to the great play callers like a Steve Spurrier. It doesn't care. It doesn't care. Oh, I've got a 2-touchdown league. Let's go get a 3-touchdown league. Let's go get a 4-touchdown league. That's how you put the game out of reach as you keep scoring. And Dabo is more of the mindset of let's just put the brakes on and hope our defense holds. And it's bit him a few times. It has. That's my complaint. That's what I have, and it's great to have a complaint at the end of a game where you have a win.
14-point win, nonetheless. And what was important, too, is you didn't turn over the football last night, and you got stops on fourth down. Duke was perfect last week on fourth down, and you're able to cough up a turnover. Jeremiah Alexander last night had a sack, a turnover recovery, 5 tackles. Transfer players starting to play a little bit better on both sides of the ball. Interesting to note. And
it's also interesting to note, Florida State no longer the nation's number 1 offense. They dropped all the way to 3rd.
All the way to 3rd. How the mighty fall. How the mighty fall. Do you think the ACC will find Clemson? Just a quick note. They were like a tad early on the field rush.
Yeah, I think, by now we've received an email on the institutional fines. But to me, I don't think so. It looked like Florida State was really able to get everybody off the field that needed to get off the field. And the officials were off the field, and that to me is the most important thing. So haven't heard anything, and, they shouldn't. They shouldn't.
It was funny. We were asking, I think it was Nikki that started this, and it was, is Clemson going to rush the field? This is maybe the last time. Primetime win. Who knows? And I'm sure the ACC and all their glory is in the lab studying it. They're like, let's look at the microseconds of, okay, does that cleat touch the concrete before the fan's boot hits the turf?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're like microscoping it, looking at it with binoculars on the film. So maybe we'll see something. But ultimately, Clemson, penultimate home game, you get the W. And now you head over to Louisville, where I think everyone had this game circled before the season because you have a short week. It's wacky. Louisville beat you last year. Woohoo. Ingredients for a fun football Friday.
Football Friday. Yeah, it's high school football, right? That's what we're talking about, high school football?
High school playoffs are going on right now in the area. So hopefully your team, if you're listening, you had a team that won last night. Congratulations. Pinewood, back home, won. That was pretty nice to see.
And let's talk about this really fast. The owner of TigerNet, Tommy Crumpton, his wife, the head volleyball coach at Pickens, and they go down to Columbia to Dreher High School and knock off Bishop England to win the state volleyball championship against a team that can recruit. And I think that's a big deal. I think that's the 18th state championship in volleyball at Pickens High School, and I think she's been a part of it as a player too. So congratulations to Tommy and Melly Crumpton.
Let's go. What a way to end the pod with a little congrats to the head honcho over at TigerNet. Guys, thank you as always for tuning in to the Orange Crush podcast. This was The Aftermath. Guys, thank you. God bless y'all.